Hello and welcome to the Columbia Daily Tribune's Behind the Stripes football webcast. This is Tribune sports editor Joe Waljasper along with Tribune football beat writer David Morrison. David, we are back from the SEC championship game. Missouri loses 59-42 to Auburn. Really probably its worst defensive game since 1986, I believe, when they lost 77-0 to Oklahoma. You have to go back that far to kind of the darkest ages of Missouri football to find an effort that bad on defense. I guess that's where you have to begin. What went wrong on defense?
I tried to get a pulse on it from the players, but they didn't seem to be very helpful in telling us what went wrong. Just kind of watching it over and reflections during the game, it seems like Auburn's offense is basically an impossible thing to replicate in practice. You can put a quarterback and a running back and a fullback back there and have them go through the motions, but you can't do it at the speed and with all the different gadgets that Auburn uses. Basically, they run the same set over and over again, but on any given play, you can have a jet sweep to the guy going behind the guy. The quarterback can keep it. The quarterback can give it to Trey Mason, who will run to this side, or he could tuck it, roll right, and throw for a 40-yard touchdown like he did to Sammy Coates. It's like every single play, there's like 5 or 6 different things they can do from that set. So it's really impossible to replicate it in practice, and it really looked like Missouri the defenders didn't have a clue what was coming on a good number of the plays. They just kind of got into their stances, stood up, and waited to be blocked, basically. And so I think that's just because the scheme is so difficult and Auburn is so good at running it and has the athletes to execute it.
Auburn has a great offense, and it's been good against everybody. It hasn't been that good against everybody. Which makes you think that, and Missouri's defense is better than some of the teams Auburn has faced. So it sort of makes you think that schematically they were barking up the wrong tree, at least for the, I'm sure the X's matched the O's on paper, but for the personnel they had, for what they were asking them to do, was a complete failure. And it was just almost rare. It almost caught your eye on the occasion where like a cornerback would get, shuck his blocker, contain the play, force it inside, and then the linebacker would pursue it, make a tackle. You're like, right. Oh yeah, that's how it's supposed to work. I'd forgotten because the previous 20 plays in a row went for 8 to 50 yards. Right. Yeah. So it reminded me a lot of the other sort of triple option attack they faced against Navy in the Texas Bowl a few years ago, where A, didn't seem to have any clue what to do. B, throughout the game, never gained a clue. Yeah. Were just as lost in the first quarter as the fourth quarter. The only difference was Auburn's athletes were so much better than Navy's. Navy would get 5 yards a carry all the way down the field, and Auburn would take chunks of 40 and 50 and could score in 30 seconds. So it was a disaster defensively in pretty much any way, but and it was a disaster. It was probably Dave Steckel's worst moment of his career. But you have to also give credit to Auburn, because I think we're going to watch this national championship game, and you're going to see Florida State probably not look too hot on defense either. Right, it's just a spectacular offense, extremely well designed and devised, and then you put that kind of speed that they've got, and obviously with an offensive line that's capable of blocking. And then the other thing is the tempo. That's one of the questions you can ask players, and they will never, ever, ever tell you that it had anything to do with anything. Right, yeah. They will never admit that they got tired because of the tempo. But just watching it, when you're there trying to keep track of what's going on, it's almost impossible as a sports writer to write down what just happened before the next play starts. Can you imagine if you weighed 320 pounds and trying to get in the stands and do something about it?
I know.
And they didn't do much about it. Yeah.
And it's a cumulative effect, too, as the game goes on. When they got Auburn behind schedule, like when they got, only a 2-yard gain on first down as opposed to an 8 or 9-yard gain, they could actually kind of reset and refocus and get their bearings. But if Auburn was getting more than 5 or 6 yards, which it did on the vast majority of the plays, it was, up to the line and next and go, and, Missouri didn't have time to do anything. So, it almost got to the point where it seemed like if you're a Missouri defender, you're just kind of dreading going back onto the field again, because you know what's going to happen. You know what's coming, and you know what's going to happen, and you really can't do anything about it.
I also think when you're facing an option offense, probably job one, if you're not good enough to sort of contain everything with assignment football, I think if you're going to cheat to stop something, if you're going to load up to stop something, you load up to stop the most simple thing, which is the dive play, and you try to make the quarterback run the ball as much as possible. he's not built the same as running back. If you bang him up a little, it has a more disastrous effect on the future of the offense. And really, the times, Auburn punted, I think, 3 times. And the other 2 times they stopped them was when the quarterback had the ball and fumbled.
Yeah.
So I think if nothing else, you want to force someone other than Trey Mason to run the ball, and he ran it 46 times.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Well, obviously Missouri's offense scored 35 of their 42 points, so they did their job. But I guess as you looked at the game as it was developing, when it became obvious Missouri couldn't stop them, was there anything along the way that you thought, well, maybe Missouri needs to do this different now because this is the game they're in, and if they're going to win it, they should play it slightly differently?
Well, it seemed like they tried a little bit to slow the game down when they were on offense. There was that one play where they gave James Franklin the first down on that 3rd and 13 scramble or whatever it was, and they waited till like 10 seconds left on the play clock to try to snap that ball because I think they were trying to give their defense a break, really just kind of take control of the tempo of the game. That actually worked not in their favor because they ended up reviewing the play and, it ended up being a 4th and 1 and a punt. But I think that was the main thing they tried. But then if you're Missouri's offense, you haven't played like that all year, so you can't you can't expect to keep up with a team like Auburn if you're going against type and taking 30 seconds between each play and really slowing things down. Because Missouri is a tempo team too. When Missouri's really going well, when the backs are breaking off 7 and 8 yard runs and everything, it's because the defense is getting tired and because they're pacing them and things like that. So Missouri tried that a little bit, but they kind of went away from it, and I think that was the right move. You can't go against what you've done all year. It's just basically, I remember in 2011 when Gus Malzahn was the offensive coordinator at Auburn, and Auburn's defense wasn't very good. There was kind of pressure on him to slow his offense down, and that made the offense worse. And you see what happens when Gus Malzahn's offense is going fast and good. So I don't think there was much they could have done offensively to kind of stem the tide.
The one thing I would say is Henry Josie got 9 carries. I think Hansborough got 6 carries or something like that, and those guys were averaging more than 6 yards a carry. That would have been one way to control a little more and make your offense a little more foolproof because James Franklin was getting a lot of pressure in the pocket. Auburn blitzed a lot, and Missouri's offensive line didn't do a fantastic job of protecting him. He was having to scramble quite a bit. So that might have been one thing they could have done is maybe lean on that tailback running. There's been a few games where you could have said that. Their offense did well all year, so you're kind of picking nits there. But that's one thing that I thought they could have. And Henry Jones, he did get banged up a little bit when he got pushed out of bounds and into that golf cart. So he was coming up a little. Then once you get down by 17 points, obviously.
You got to throw. Yeah.
The thing was, I thought that maybe it didn't come back to haunt him, but like on the 4th and 1 play you were talking about, even though it was in Missouri's territory, I thought at that point you probably just needed to go for it. It was a game that it was obvious your defense was not going to win it for you. It was obvious that field goals weren't going to win it for you. You were going to have to just score touchdowns almost every possession to have a chance. So I thought maybe you need to adjust accordingly to that. But in the end, you can quibble with little things here and there. It was the defense getting gashed that lost the game for them. So as it turned out, they would have gone to the BCS championship game had they won, but they didn't. Now they're going to the Cotton Bowl facing Oklahoma State. Your thoughts on that matchup, if that's kind of the best they could have hoped for?
I think it is. There could be some gripes that they could have gone to the Capital One Bowl instead of South Carolina since they were, they won the SEC East, they were ranked ahead of them in the BCS, things like that. But if you're a Missouri fan, do you want to go and play Wisconsin or say Iowa in the Outback Bowl, or do you want to play Oklahoma State? A team that you've got a little bit of a history with and a team that plays a similar style to you, so it'll be kind of an entertaining kind of back and forth game, things like that. And also it's the Cotton Bowl. It's it's a place that the 2007 team went and just ran all over Arkansas. So they've got a history there too. They traveled well there last time. And I really feel like that's about the best they could have hoped for after the loss. They weren't getting into the BCS. Alabama was there. There wasn't any way the Sugar was going to pass up on Alabama. And then, I don't know that the Outback felt that Missouri fans would travel as well to Tampa as LSU fans did. So I think that's kind of their thought process in that. And then the Capital One Bowl, bowls have kind of short memory spans, and they see, well, South Carolina's coming off a win over Clemson, and they beat Missouri, whereas Missouri's coming off a loss in the SEC title game. So, I mean, I think Cotton's about the best they could ask for, and I mean, it's really the best matchup of the three possible ones. South Carolina, Wisconsin, LSU, Iowa. So, I mean, I think, I think it's about the best they could ask for.
It depends on what you're looking for as a fan. Would you like the closest thing to a sure thing to a win in a 12-2 season? Then that would mean playing Iowa. Wisconsin and Oklahoma State maybe are somewhat close to a wash in that regard. I think what you'll probably see, and people usually complain about this in the Big 12, and it's probably not going to be much different now, is that your proximity to where these bowls are located is a factor. You saw it in the SEC championship game. It was probably at least 3/4 of the crowd was Auburn because they could drive it, and Missouri fans couldn't. And so when you're talking about these Florida bowls, I think they're going to naturally prefer schools that are closer, such as South Carolina. So that's just the way it goes. And for Missouri fans, Dallas is, I think, the best as far as locale, as far as they're concerned. Kansas City fans especially, that's not a bad drive for them. So it all worked out fine. I think once you get past the BCS games, that next little bowl wedge is about the same difference one way or the other. Lastly, it's kind of award season now, and all SEC awards and that sort of thing. Let's just go over your choice and mine for Missouri's offensive and defensive MVP. Start with offense.
I mean, it'd be tough to give it to a skill position player just because there's so many of them and they spread it out so much. And then James Franklin was out for almost 4 games. So, I mean, I might have to go to the line, and I might have to go with Justin Britt for offensive MVP.
Man, I was going to go that way and throw you a huge curveball, but you beat me to it.
I anticipated your curveball and threw an ephus pitch, anyway. But yeah, Justin Britt, because he's coming off that ACL injury. He's protecting the blind side all year, which means he's going up against the toughest competition basically week in and week out, and he did a pretty good job this year. I mean, there weren't any opposing ends that had 3 or 4 sack games, because Justin Britt was good at protecting, and then also obviously he's an integral part of the run game. And then he seems like almost the enforcer. Like I keep flashing back to the Florida game when Antonio Morrison knocked Marcus Murphy out of bounds, and then 2 plays later, Justin Britt just pushed him 100 yards down the field just to kind of prove a point. So, I mean, I like that nasty streak, and I think he's had a really good senior year, and he would be my offensive MVP. And then on defense...
Wait. We have to do my offensive MVP, and I agree with you. I picked him too, just basically because I thought James Franklin would have been the obvious choice, except for he was out for basically a third of the season. And when you looked at it, when he was out, Missouri kept right on and winning. Henry Josie would have been another good candidate, over 1,000 yards. But when he was out of the game, Marcus Murphy and Russell Hansborough play, and they all put up similar averages per carry. The receivers, LaDainian Washington, Dorial Green-Beckham, both had really good years, similar years. And I think what I'm getting at here is a lot of these guys seem to be a little more interchangeable, and so maybe it'll all go back to the line and how they were blocking. So I would go with Britt too. I think, like you said, I think Missouri's had a lot of good athletic left tackles. I don't know that they've had a lot of them with the mean streak that he's got. I think he'll be an NFL player. I don't know how he's going to test out, but I think he's a guy that, to me, is a pretty good prospect.
Yeah, me too.
All right, now, defense.
Do you want to go first?
I'm going to let you go first.
All right. Well, I mean, Michael Sam would be the obvious choice, but he had spurts. He had 3 sack games, and then in the other 10 games, he had 1.5 sacks and kind of disappeared for stretches and things like that. I would have to go with, and this is a guy who missed almost 3 games this season. I would have to go with E.J. Gaines because he was just so versatile in both the run and the pass games. I mean, he's their 3rd leading tackler as a cornerback, missing 3 games in the season. That's kind of crazy. And then also, he led the team in interceptions, and he just totally shut down Mike Evans, who's the best receiver in the league, basically. And then even against Auburn, Sammy Coates had those 2 huge hitters early, and they kind of cycled Gaines over to him more, and they tried a couple of those screens, and he sniffed them out and blew them up, and they didn't need to throw to Sammy Coates anymore after that, but that was kind of an option that was taken off the table. So, I mean, I feel like E.J. Gaines was the best player on defense most consistently this year. If you're going to take like biggest upside, that would be Michael Sam, because he had games where he just went crazy. But yeah.
The other thing you can say for Gaines is they may not even be in the SEC championship game if not for him shutting down Mike Evans completely. I guess I would go with Coney Ely. Like you said with Michael Sam, it seemed like he could take advantage of overmatched tackles for huge gains, but then you didn't see him much the rest of the season. Not that he didn't play hard, he just didn't play effectively. And Coney was facing better pass blockers as the right defensive end versus left tackle. So he made a big play against Indiana when that game was certainly in doubt. They go ahead to win big. He was the only guy I really thought that showed up against Auburn at all. Without him, they probably would have lost 80-25 or something. So I think he's another guy that you might want to keep an eye on, whether he's going to stick around next year or go to the NFL. He's someone that the NFL might have their eye on. When it gets a little closer to the bowl game time, we will have another webcast discussing the bowl. But until then, enjoy our basketball webcast, and David will get some well-earned time off.